Dr. Tro, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
No,
I'm interested to hear your story a little bit too, and hopefully we could do a swap later on where you come on our podcast, but I'm happy to be here now.
yeah, I would love to. Before I jump into that, though, I want for my listeners who may not be aware of who you are and what you do. Do you want to give a quick bio just so you can bring people up to speed?
Oh man, quick bio. That one's hard. Well, how quick do you want it?
Hey, we got a whole hour here, so make it as quick
Oh,
or
we got an
not quick
hour.
as you want.
My
Yeah.
bio could take an hour. Um, let's just start with like basics. I'm a board certified internal medicine doctor. I'm a board certified obesity medicine doctor. I used to be 350 pounds, and that was about 10 years ago. I had watched my family suffer all throughout my childhood. Went to Weight Watchers with my mom at a young age. When I was 13, I was the current weight I am now, about 200 pounds. And I remember being 13 years old, waiting in my doctor's waiting room for about an hour and a half, only for him to put me on a scale and tell me I'm fat, like my family.
Mm.
And remembering that I was gonna go to medicine and fuck him, and like if he fucking cared, why didn't he put a bike in his waiting room? Why did he put me there for an hour and a half and then just to put me on a scale and tell me to go count calories? He didn't realize I have like a photographic memory, so I knew every single calorie. So he literally told me, go count calories and go lose weight. So I remember that day vividly, and I knew I wanted to be a doctor then. Um, and fast forward 20 years, I went to med school, gained 10 pounds a year, went to, residency, gained 10 pounds a year, became chief resident, gained 10 pounds. And then finally, my wife, when she was in between kid two and kid three, um, we she basically asked me, she's like, "Are you going to be alive?"
Mm.
And she kind of played me like she knew I was an arrogant son of a bitch, and so she just was like, "Look," I was like, "You're smart. You're the chief resident. You got 90th percentile in your board exam. Like, you can't figure this out." So that was like the hero, journey. Like a lot of struggle, seeing my parents suffer, seeing my brother. I have two brothers that still suffer from metabolic health, and wanting to do something about it. So that's me. I mean, I can get like I have a nationwide practice. We have several doctors, four health coaches, a personal trainer, an app. We have remote monitoring equipment. So at any given moment, every morning I get alerts from everywhere out throughout the country on people's weight fluctuations. When people's blood sugar fluctuates, we get alerts and we reach out. We see how we can help people. Um, and we practice great metabolic care. We have networks of lab companies, imaging companies. So if we need to get a heart scan, if we need to get lab work, we can deliver that across the United States. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's very cool, man. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to reach out is that I saw that you had lost 150 pounds and you've kept it off for 10 years, which is, if you look at the data, that's pretty unheard of. If you look at the statistics, people tend to arrive at a set point and they will lose temporarily and they sort of over time regress back to that mean, right? So I wanted to ask you, like, what's the secret, man? What's the hack? What's the trick that you've figured out to sort of keep this off long term?
Um, Man, you sound like a tech CEO. Yeah,
I am in tech, so
yeah, yeah. Um, there's no hacks. There's no hacks. You have drives to eat, and then you have ways of managing that, right? And there's no hacks. I mean, there's like simple basics. Don't eat addictive food.
mm,
If a food makes you eat more and you want to lose weight, definitely don't eat that, right? If you're left not feeling full off of, enough, right? Like, don't eat that, right? That's making you eat more. So don't, I think that's step one. Don't eat foods that make you eat more. And then pay attention to foods that leave you full. So if a food makes you full quickly, leaves you full for a long time, well, I mean that's golden information, right? So and that's a little personal, like the Armenian pastries I grew up with is not exactly the food you remember when you were a kid, right? So, everybody has a different, the baseline programming language is the same. It's carbs, fat, sweet, and salty, right?
Hmm.
So like that's the baseline programming. Your brain is going to go for some combination of carbs and fat. It's going to combine and if it can't, and it's going to want salty and sweet. So if you sort of understand how your mind will lead you to food, how stress will lead you to food, how emotions will lead you to food, how food will lead you back to food, how social triggers will lead you to food. So if you understand kind of the baseline programming, then it's like easy. It's sort of like the Matrix. You just like swat that, do the. Um, but if you're sort of stuck and you think like this is some budgeting thing that you have to, grind harder on, I think most people are going to really struggle with that. Um, Most people need insight, not like help with budgeting.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and I think a lot of average folks. I'm not trying to be haughty about this view, but I'm a nerd. Like I read a lot. I look into a bunch of information. I understand what food scientists do. These big companies, they hire food scientists to literally hijack your biology to get you addicted to this hyper palatable food. And so I see how people get trapped by it. It's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. It's absolutely everywhere you go. It's almost like a drug. I look at food in a lot of cases very much like an addictive drug. And people, if they're not aware they're being manipulated, can very easily fall into that trap.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot worse than probably what you know, and maybe you could have gone way deep, but let's put it this way, you stand no chance. You stand zero chance, right? If you're up against a modern food environment, you are losing. It's like going to a casino and expecting to win. You're not going to win, right? Maybe if you've devoted your entire life to statistics and counting and practicing, right? Maybe you have a chance. And even then, they're going to kick you out, you know? So you have no shot. There's teams of marketers to figure out how to convince you, convince your family, convince your kids, convince everybody this food is normal and acceptable, and they'll find a way, some holiday, some way to get it in your life, right? They've infiltrated everybody you care about. So it's a lot worse than you think. So that's just the marketing side, right? And they've made it normal. And when it's not normal, this food is not normal that we're, exposed to. And then the way that they leverage ingredients, it's just not they use the least satiating fats, right, in their foods. They use the uh, combination of flavors that they hide. That they literally they put natural flavors. They don't even tell you what it is. Artificial flavors. They don't even tell you what those are. And they combine salt with and sweetness with non-nutritive stuff that leaves you hungry for more. It's a lot worse than most people think. A lot worse. So you're not going to win that, and you can just look around. 60% are overweight or obese. 60% have prediabetes or diabetes. 60% of prehypertension or hypertension. Less than 10% have no metabolic issues whatsoever. So, yeah, I think it's just face the facts. If you're going against a modern food environment, don't expect anything good.
Yeah, completely agree with that. And I, being the nerd, like I said, I oftentimes get a little bit too wonky. And I think I had Dr. Lindy Louise on the show a while ago, and I think she encapsulated it just perfectly. She's like, "Don't overcomplicate things. You eat whole foods, for the most part, you're gonna be fine, right? And that has really stuck with me and has really simplified my life. Like, I don't count calories, I don't count macros. I eat a very red meat centric diet, and the weight just falls off. Like, for me, just sticking to that regiment has completely revolutionized the way I approach dieting. It is so simple. My normal hunger signals, they take care of me. Like, I eat one meal a day, maybe two meals a day, and man, it's just the simplest thing ever.
Look, so where I'm at in my career, like I have to learn how to break every system so that you can learn how to fix every system. And even that system is like, if you go to real Whole Foods, right? Combine date paste and your meat, right? You take the meat, right? And you put date paste in it. Like you're gonna eat more,
Mm.
right? It's dates and it's meat, right? So they'll find ways to abuse Whole 30, Whole Foods, and just take like heavy whipping cream, whip it up, and combine it with berries and try to limit that. So, like this idea that, like before we had modern processed food, we made food palatable. We preserved food. Grandma made the apple pie with the leftover apples and the sugar she milled and the flour she milled, right? So, I think the idea that, it's a simple food rule, eat whole foods, right? It's also simple rule, don't eat carbs. It's also simple rule, eat in a narrow window a day. And simple food rules are really easy to stick to. They're awesome. And most of the time they're right. Most of the time they'll help the majority of people, but even that can be abused, right? Even those can be, I think so over the long term, gaining insight is like really the answer. Gaining knowledge and insight is really the answer. And actually partnering with people and pulling them out of the gutter rather than just sort of giving them this food rule and saying, well, this is what you
Mm.
have to do. And if you don't do it well enough, you're gonna, if you tell me to eat whole foods, I'll eat nuts. I'll combine nuts and dark chocolate. I'll take any fruit and combine it with heavy whipping cream and whip it up and make myself whipped cream. I'll add any sort of fruit concentrate to my meats to preserve it and make it tasty. I'll add a ton of salt. Um, so you just be careful. If you're on this, it sounds like 1 year you're on this mission. It's a good food rule. Eat real foods. It's a great food rule. Eat low carb. Another great food rule. Eat in a narrow eating window. All those are great.
Yeah, yeah, and when I said that, I meant relative to the standard American diet, right? So that is a simple step that you can take to move from absolutely horrible to being in a much better position. And so I agree with you. Like, I avoid carbs for the most part. And I also keep a very narrow eating window. So that's a really good rule. And I think that those basic things can have you go a very long way. They'll be very provide a lot of utility for folks. What I want to ask you is, do you look at the person holistically in your practice? Because there seems to be some indication in the literature that childhood trauma or adverse childhood experiences can contribute to obesity. Dr. Vincent Fleety's work out of Kaiser Permanente, he ran the obesity clinic that first sort of uncovered, if you're familiar with the ACEs study. I don't know if you think about any of that stuff or approach the psychological condition from your practice, or whether it's strictly straight medicine and glucose monitors and metrics and food rules and providing counseling support for your clients. Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, every patient in our clinic has got an ACE study done.
Mm.
And 90% are ACE positive. So meaning that if you look at the ACE questionnaire for your listener who may not know, the ACE questionnaire is adverse childhood events, and it's a 10-question questionnaire basically saying, were you abused? Emotional, verbal, physical, and sexual. Was there mental health issues in the home? Was there, depression or suicide in the home? Was there anybody in jail? Absolutely. And it probably, yes, we do that. We also look for binge eating, anxiety, depression. Everybody screened. We also assess readiness to change. I mean, we are like we're like
we're a different practice, so you shouldn't sort of like look to us and we're unique with the level of information we sort of take into account. We also, when we onboard a patient, we are literally gathering every single health record that they ever have had, every CAT scan they've done, every imaging they've done, every lab they've done. We go literally from childhood to present, right, with every sort of major life event, assessing what happened in their life, health wise, metabolic wise, weight wise. And we also go backwards and do a full pedigree, looking at their entire family, all the way to the, grandparents and great grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles. So we're like different, man. We're not, and then we use we use remotely monitored equipment. So we're big believers in creating that medical home. So your scale, your blood pressure cuff, thermometer, pulse ox, blood sugar meter, peak flow meter, Holter monitors, which is like a cardiac monitor, CPAP machine, sleep studies, all remotely, you know, uh, doorstep, our clinic to your doorstep labs. You do finger pricks, you put them on a card, you send them back in. I mean, we make medicine very comprehensive and very it's just different, And the idea behind this is just why wouldn't a clinic want all that data, right? If I'm actually caring for you in a meaningful way, why wouldn't I want all that data? Um, if you go back to my childhood, like this is my response to Dr. Adis, I'll get you Dr. Adis. Uh, so yeah, we're a bit different. And so to answer your question very specifically, yes, we look at the adverse childhood events, and there's a strong correlation between anxiety, depression, adverse childhood events, and weight regain. So it's something that we're absolutely, we have our finger on our pulse. We're not yet at the point where we can afford, and there's some issues with nationwide scaling of mental health counseling. There's no compact, so it's very hard to get mental health counselors licensed nationwide. So there's some limitations there, but that's an area that we're really looking into more. Our health coaches, they can't diagnose, so they're not mental health counselors, but they understand all of these issues and can follow up with some of them and refer out when we need. But absolutely, I mean, it's a different. And then when you start in on a program, like just to give you a feel, when you start in on our program, I mean, you're meeting with somebody who's onboarding you, explaining what we do for an hour. You're getting equipment. You're getting labs done. We're gathering records. You're meeting with a health coach in 1 week. You're getting assignments in an app like interactive video, lessons like on day one. And then usually within a month, you're meeting with a doctor and a health coach together to sort of create a unified vision of what that health plan will look like. And it's weekly follow up. I mean, to get people off of modern food. So it's a different experience, It's, I would say like ICU level metabolic and weight management. But yeah, sorry, that was a long-winded answer.
No, I appreciate that. I'm really
I
happy.
told you 1 hour was not going to be enough,
That's fine. It's all good
Yeah.
content. No, I'm really happy that you look at it this way, because I think it's oftentimes underlooked. It's one of those things that people don't think about that is actually a major driver in obesity. So happy that you're on top of that, and also happy to see this model that you've cultivated. This is the antithesis of standard medicine, and I wonder if you could talk about that, like how you got into this, because most modern medicine seems to be worried about turning a profit, getting patients in, getting patients out. Don't say a damn thing. Like when I started gaining my weight, doctor didn't say a damn thing. Here's your lab. Every year you have an annual physical. Here's your labs, and stuff would start to slide out of tolerance. They'd be like, they'd just kind of shrug. They wouldn't really say anything. Nobody ever said, hey, maybe you're gaining a little bit of weight. Maybe you should think about considering diet, exercise. What, they didn't say a thing. Like this, literally just in out, and there's no. They didn't look at any data like you're looking at. There was no apparent care for my health. They weren't sort of aiming in a direction, trying. They weren't goal oriented. Like, what are we looking at from a metabolic standpoint? It is just in, out, rubber stamp. See you next year.
I mean, how do you want me to unpack that? Because there's two sides to that, right? It's why has the system failed, and then how to create different models, right, to pick up where they leave off, right? So I think like I don't know how holistic you want to go into this conversation, but let's just briefly cover why they failed you, right? They failed you because you are not their customer, your insurance company is,
Mm.
right? So they get paid by your insurance company, and they get paid by your insurance company, and they're incentivized to see you in less time and write down more things. So they're not even looking at you, they're just typing up more things about you and bringing you back more often, or um, so that's their incentive. Their incentive by the insurance company is based on occurrence, and so and it de-incentivizes actually creating a lasting relationship and actually helping you, right? There's no incentive to do any of that. So you're relying on the doctor's, I guess, goodwill, and it sounds like you never got that. So that's why the system doesn't work for you, doesn't work for most people. It works great in acute care if something acutely happens and they're able to identify acute issues, right? But it doesn't work at all for preventive care or actually really anything to do with weight management or just excellence. It's not a model of excellence. So the system sucks. Um, and it's the insurance companies and it's the doctors who accept that model, right? When they bring you in and they, you know, give you hypertension and they put you on a medication and they are now able to do an EKG and they're now able to bring you back 2 months later for your refills. I mean, that's just easy, right? Actually assessing your childhood trauma and figuring out how stress modulates your hunger and committing to, sort of looking at this in real time and trying to intervene as close as possible, developing an actual plan for you so you have a clear vision of what you're up against when it comes to your metabolic health. That's hard and nobody pays for it, right? Or it's hard to get paid for it. So that's why it failed you, and it fails most people. And then so I think the creativity of thinking about this problem the other way is interesting because most doctors I believe have this interest in like getting you healthy. Like nobody wants to see you fat and miserable. Nobody wants to see you die young. Nobody wants to see you suffer with disease, chronic knee pain. Nobody wants to see that, right? But yet they kind of also don't know how to do anything different, and you kind of don't expect anything different. So we're left in this sort of place. So when I was starting my clinic, telemedicine clinic, like 8 years ago and trying to envision it, it was really how do we take the outside interests out? So no pharma money, no insurance money whatsoever, right? That was step one. And then how do we make this like results based? How do we make it so that I know how I'm doing, you know how I'm doing, I know how you're doing, and we're holding each other accountable, right? And that comes with real-time data tracking, right? So we were big proponents of telemedicine before telemedicine was a thing. And so we have like a little bit of a leg up on that. And so So we're able to show people systematically, here's what we're doing for you, here's what we're doing together, and if it's not working for them, they can just leave, right? They're under no sort of, they don't have to pay. This is a service-based business. It's not like you're locked in, right? So I'm on the hook to do a good job for them. I don't know if that makes sense.
It totally does, and completely. It is something that I want to see more of, and I want to shout out when I see it happening because I'm a free market guy, right? Like I think the whole medical establishment and the insurance based model is backwards. The consumer should know what they're paying for. They should have a bill. Here's my this costs me this much money. I'm the consumer. I'm paying the bill. When you have the insurance in the middle, the consumer has no signal as far as cost. It's kind of like if you like to go into the supermarket and you walk in the door and you pay a $30 copay to walk in the door, and like what are you going to get? Of course, you're going to get steak, you're going to get lobster, you're going to get there's no feedback mechanism there, right? And I think that
It's even worse. It's not just the cost. So you don't know the costs, and there's a whole slew of reasons why it's considered proprietary information. There's dual gag orders, meaning the doctor can't tell you and the insurance company can't tell you beforehand. And they do this so like for competitive reasons. They try to not tell, like one insurance company doesn't want the other one to know what they're paying, right? And the doctors don't want to know, like, they don't want to know that somebody else is offering something cheaper than them. So everybody signs this, like, it's this wink, wink, nod, nod, we're not going to have transparency. And actually, this was changed in the previous Trump administration. They brought transparency, and the way the hospitals sort of they just did it to the hospitals. They forced them to write the cost of things, and they didn't want to. The hospital association said, "Fuck you, we're not doing that." And they lost in court. And so what they did was they just literally put in like a website with like the codes and the number and like the dollars in complete sequence in a way that was like unsearchable or unidentifiable. So they like did the bare minimum. So it's very, very nefarious, and it's really terrible. So yes, you don't know the price of things, but to make it even worse, you don't know the value of that thing, right? So when you go from one doctor to the other, you have no way of knowing how does this doctor relate to that doctor. I mean, you go to Google reviews and you know what, like, oh, Tro says fuck on Twitter, like that's what it says, right? So, and you don't know that, I've documented the largest cholesterol lowering in the literature, the second largest cholesterol lowering in the literature. You don't know that I've documented the weight loss results that's comparable, at 1 year to injection drugs, and we just submitted that data. You don't know that, his patients are getting a 44% reduction, retrospective study, looking at cardiac risk reduction, 44% risk reduction on the 10-year AHA risk calculator. So you have no way of comparing, like, forget about the money, right? Like, the money's one thing, but like, what are you getting? What are you actually buying? Like, okay, you're kind of got $30,000. You get this car, you get that car, right? Like, you're getting a car, but which one lasts longer, right? You kind of want to know this stuff, and none of that data exists. So it's a really there's no agency on the really on the consumer end. So we started out with individuals and really catering to the individual, and we still do. You can sign up for our care anywhere in the nation, but and that, if I told you the legal hurdles to get through that, talk about free markets. We have 50 state licenses. It costs us $100,000 a year to be able to deliver nationwide care. It's insane, you know. But if you look at what we've shifted to is, like, we've shown that we're able to save money, right? We've shown that we can stop drugs that people no longer need. And so, given the fact, and you'll appreciate this as a free market guy, like, these new diabetes and heart medications are literally going to bankrupt every company that's self-insured out there. Every company is going to go bankrupt because the costs are insane.
Isn't it like $1,300 a month?
It could be if you're on 2 diabetes medications, it could be even more than
Oh,
that.
I was thinking about the GLP-1 stuff. I'd heard like the Ozempic and stuff was.
Yeah, it's like $800 a month probably, or 600 to 800 after the cost savings or whatever bullshit things that they have in the back end. So if you 600, but then if you're on like another drug that makes you pee out sugar, which is hot right now, you're easily looking at $1,500. So this is going to bankrupt the small and medium-sized businesses. Maybe the large businesses will be fine. They'll figure out a way to manage it. So our proposition is pretty clear. You know, if you give us your sick patients and who are motivated to come off drugs, we have an impact. And so we have a way of being able to come into companies, and we work with now 7 companies where we just come in, we screen everybody, you know, give them a metabolic health screening. Here's where you're at. Maybe give them a CGM. And then we determine who is interested in actually losing weight using lifestyle. And then who is also, because you don't want, like, somebody like you who's already lost 80 pounds and you're doing great. Like, I don't want to see you. You're fine, you know? But there's people out there who are stuck. They're on 10 different meds, who are in that hospital system you talked about, that they are not even being told anything about losing weight. And it's those people that we really want to reach. And it's a win-win. You know, if we find those people in a company that's, you know, we can save money for any company at about 500 employees or more. And the employees love it. You know, it's a voluntary program. So now we work pretty much because of the free market system, you know, where we're aligned, we're producing a value for the employer and the employee, right? And the employer wins because they save money and they get a more productive, happy workforce, and the employee wins because they get happier and healthier, right? It's like a win-win-win. And the only loser is pharma and the established medical system. So, like, we have found the free market hack, you know, and that's been our focus for like the last 7 years. Yeah,
That's
sorry.
super cool. That is super cool. It's very close to my heart, man. So kudos to you. I know it's very difficult to navigate those waters, man. All that bureaucracy and red tape, and you know, entrenched interests, rent seeking, and all that sort of stuff is difficult to navigate. So kudos for cracking that code. I want to ask a couple of tactical questions here. How does a regular person get a CGM, man? Because like I've been looking into that a little bit. I'm thinking that'd be great
Right
if
on
I
our
had.
website, man. Right on,
Sweet.
right on our website.
I thought you had to have a prescription or have type 2 diabetes to get a CGM. Is that not true?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're licensed all throughout the no. So any doctor can prescribe it off label. So one, we were the first practice that offered CGMs, and basically we were the doctors who would prescribe it. We would set up a visit with you. Hey, what are your goals? What are you looking to do? This is the limitations. This is the harms. Are you aware of them? Yes, yes, yes. Here's your CGM script, right? So, I mean, like, I don't want to give a CGM to, let's say, somebody with anorexia who is looking to limit their food even further, right? That would be like so we really, like, we're mindful about not robo prescribing, and just like literally 5 minutes. Let's figure out what you're trying to do. Makes sense? All right, here's a prescription. But we have launched nationwide CGMs now without a prescription, and I think we're the lowest cost available option nationwide, and it's $55 for one CGM. I mean, this is basically our cost, so I don't think you can beat that, brother. And you don't need a script now, so you know, go right onto the website and get yourself a CGM.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I'm a
Yeah,
data nerd, man. I would love to see that, and I've been doing the old finger stick thing, and it's just a point in time. It doesn't tell me the full story. So
that sounds terrible.
yeah, it's kind of terrible, but it's better than not checking at all, right? Like I've got enough data points to see I'm going in the right direction generally. So
Oh man, get a CGM.
yeah,
It's
I'm
save
definitely
your
going to.
fingers.
Cool.
Yeah.
January 1st. Let's start this new year off right, man. I'm definitely going to do it. Second question I have for you is around cholesterol. You mentioned you were tracking cholesterol reduction. So is cholesterol the boogeyman that everyone's making it out to be? What's your opinion on cholesterol?
You got like another hour?
I, I don't, but can you
No?
TLDR me? Give me the Cliff Notes version.
Um, okay. Well, let's do this. Let's reshape the question to who has to worry about their heart health, right?
Mm.
That's probably like, because they're like, it's a segue of saying who has to worry about your heart health, right? So if you have diabetes, pre-diabetes, you have to worry about your heart health. Okay, if you have a family history, anybody who's died or had a heart attack at a young age, you have to worry about your heart health. Okay, even one family member with a heart attack below 60 years old, you got to worry about heart health. If you have metabolic syndrome, which is low HDL, high triglycerides, big waist, high blood sugar, you have to worry about heart health, right? So if your good cholesterol is really low, you have to worry about heart health. If you smoke, you have to worry about heart health. So I think that if you take the cholesterol out of the picture and just look at it like, do I have to worry about my heart health? Yes or no? Those are the people that really need to worry about their heart health. And now, once you answer that question, yes, I should worry about my heart health. Well, now you're like, okay, what are the most important things I can do? The most important thing you can do is lose weight. Okay, and the second most important is decrease your blood pressure, decrease your metabolic syndrome, which is raise up that good cholesterol, lower triglycerides, and reverse your diabetes, right? Reverse your diabetes and or put it into remission. And this would be, through lowering carbohydrates and through fat loss and muscle gain. Now, and physical activity and quit smoking. Those are like the first 7 most important things. Now, if you've done all those and you're like, Tro, what about lowering my cholesterol? I don't think it's, well, if you've done all those, first of all, you're now somebody who does not need to worry about their heart, right? And if you are worried, you can very easily screen heart disease with an ultrasound of your arteries, right? Your carotid arteries and a CAT scan of the heart. You can get data points, and look at how much vascular disease you have.
This is the CAC scoring?
Yeah, CAC or CCTA. Now they're AI augmented and a little bit better. So there's multiple ways to do it. So now the question becomes, do you have vascular disease and do you want to do something about it? So I think the question really about cholesterol is, do I have to worry about heart health? And if you can answer yes to any of those, then it's, do I have heart disease, right? Do I have any evidence of, heart disease, or is my risk high enough that maybe I should just do something about it? If you have heart disease on one of those tests, then I think you need to consider cholesterol. I think you should consider, what you can do. And that whole management is, there's the cookie cutter approach is like your number's high, take a medication. And I don't think that's good enough. There's a lot more you can do that's holistic, as you mentioned. So bottom line is, it's not the boogeyman. It's a very, it's intimately related with heart disease, but it's not as important as some of the other things that I just mentioned.
Got it. And the reason I'm asking is because when I first started last January, I started off my health thing basically with a World Carnivore Month last January. And I did that. And a lot of people were screaming at me. It's like, oh, you need to worry about your cholesterol. But what I noticed was the first thing that I saw in my metrics was my blood pressure fell off a cliff. When I cut out carbohydrates and went to a meat-based diet, I saw I was borderline hypertension. I was pre-hypertensive. And when I finished that month, I was down in the low end of normal. I mean, just from cutting out carbohydrates and going with meat. And my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just some idiot on the internet, but my understanding is a lot of this comes from the heart disease risk comes from disrupted endothelium caused by like chronic inflammation. That endothelium gets disrupted, and then the cholesterol sort of fills the void and tries to patch it up like a Band-Aid. Gets between that endothelium and the arterial wall and builds up a plaque. Right, that's the risk. So if you have the lowered blood pressure, you have less mechanical pressure, pushing on the endothelium, sort of cramming that stuff in there. Do I have that piece right?
I think we're all sort of supposing what happens on a microscope level, a micro electron microscope level. I think if you look at the things that link most closely to heart disease, and it depends on your susceptibility. So if you have endothelial dysfunction genes and you have endothelial dysfunction, you're going to have heart disease. Doesn't matter what your cholesterol is, because you have some cholesterol, right? So it's going to try to, it's going to be involved in whatever way, whether it's repair or through the pressure gradient, which is another theory. Whatever it is, you're going to have heart disease. So I think, um, and then there's, other issues, right? If you produce a lot of cholesterol, absorb a lot of cholesterol, or retain a lot of cholesterol because the receptors um, are not pulling it out. I think that then there's a cascade of other issues, right? So like I think the general idea of, yeah, the first inciting event is inflammation or endothelial dysfunction, right? That's the first inciting event. And then the second event is some repair process. There's data to support that idea. I don't know that anybody knows. I think it's a pretty good theory. Um, but, you know, we don't look at heart arteries over 50 years to verifiably say. But to answer your question, the data supports what you're saying. And that's not exactly the mainstream cardiology understanding right now, which 80% of cardiologists would say this is just a pressure gradient issue of cholesterol going into the arteries, and it builds up over a lifetime.
Yeah, the reason I ask is I saw the big, the thing with Lane Norton. He was on Rhonda Patrick, and then did a couple of other pieces of content on his own. And then he got in the kerfuffle with Nick Norwitz about the Mendelian randomization trials around people that have genetic predisposition to make more cholesterol and sort of have that associated with heart disease outcomes. And so at least gave me pause later this year. I started looking at this and I'm like, is Lane bringing something to the table? Is this actually right? Or should I not be worried about it? Because I've been betting a lot on not necessarily worrying about cholesterol and focusing on, doing other good things, making sure my blood pressure is okay. I've been doing sauna for almost an hour a day for an entire year. The sauna studies out of Finland seem to indicate that is a very, very cardioprotective. I've been taking very, very high grade, third party tested fish oil supplements, and doing a lot of things to offset the potential increase in cholesterol. And that's kind of like the strategy I've deployed. But I got to admit, I'm a layperson. I'm just trying to do my best here to sift through the data.
So I got no problem with saunas. I love saunas. I love saunas myself. I've looked into several. I was this close to purchasing the barrel, but I'm not purchasing the barrel because of some of the issues with it. And I am also looking into getting a high quality one, not just one from, some factory with a ton of formaldehyde glue in it, right? So, but anyway, look, I think with each one of the things you mentioned, you can go down to the nitty gritty. So you just said sauna. Here's the Finland study. It's a retrospective study looking at 20% decrease in cardiovascular mortality. I mean, it could just be the rich people who have, saunas. Literally, it could just be that.
Well, hold on. I think the argument out of the Finland study is that the reason Finland was important is because sauna is ubiquitous in Finland. That every house, no matter rich, poor, whatever, they've all got saunas. It's just part of the culture. That was one of the reasons that they sort of.
That sounds great, but rich people have more time to use it, right?
Fair.
So I'm not knocking. So I'm just saying it's not solid science that it's based on. It's a good idea. I mean, like what's the worst? You're gonna sweat a little bit, and you're gonna like heat up in the winter. I mean, I don't like. So my point is it a bad thing to do? I don't think so. Would I think that it's gonna help my heart disease? Not necessarily, right? Not necessarily. And the data is so soft, right? It's so soft. I would do it. I would personally do it. I mean, if I had $6,000 to kill and an hour a day, sign me up, man. Sign me up. And then I do a cold plunge afterwards with even less data, but it feels so good.
Well, I think we also can't. Yeah, we also can't discount the placebo effect, right? Because I think a lot of people in the community are like, "Oh, that's just placebo effect." It's like, well, hold on a second. If it provides a visible benefit, which a placebo effect clearly does, like go for it. Like if it helps, it helps. That's my view.
Look, absolutely, it could also be placebo, and the great guy out of the Harvard Placebo Studies group. Dr. Hughes, he's written about this, the potential of placebo even in therapy. But like just to come back, I think the question is should you worry? And you brought up Mendelian randomization. There's a lot of Mendelian randomization is so ripe for type 2 errors, meaning like they have Mendelian randomizations, for everything now. Literally, you and I can get together, like type in Google right now, uh, get mentorship for a Mendelian randomization publication for $1,000. You and I can do Mendelian randomization for the effects of vitamin D on CRP and publish this nonsense, right? Show some near linear correlation and actually publish it. I mean, you know, it is pretty comical how we've over relied on Mendelian randomization to mean something. I think it should still be viewed as hypothesis generating. I'm going to put together like a ton of studies that are just so comical, and many of them have been retracted. There are so many Mendelian randomization studies on vitamin D that have been retracted at this point because they're basically comical.
Have you
Um,
seen the spurious correlation website?
no, I haven't.
Oh my God, I have got to send this to you. Yeah, it's one
Yeah.
of those things that has very, very tight p values on things that are clearly not associated with each other. They're absolutely hilarious. I will send it to you.
Yeah. So
Everyone look it up. It's hilarious.
yeah. But to answer your question, I think that you can't ignore the data, right? There's a lot of data pointing in one direction, genetic data, drug data, but then there's a lot of chinks in that armor, right, for cholesterol. So I don't think if you have heart disease, I think you pay a little more attention to it. If you don't have heart disease, not disregard it, but it's like low on my list. And then to answer your question about Lane Norton and Rhonda Patrick, I'm not confident in either of their ability to understand like Rhonda Patrick promotes sauna, and I get it. I think
Hmm?
it's something great. I like sauna, and she was very favorable on it. Her tweet went viral, but it's like a BS retrospective study that, it's not BS. It's just it's a good hypothesis. It looks like it has a good, but somebody literally has to take people who did sauna, compare them to, people who don't do sauna, and see what happens 10 years later before we really think too much into this. In the meantime, bro, enjoy your sauna, you know? But like, I wouldn't falsely believe it's helping. Like, that's faith. That's faith in science. They have faith in science. I have no faith in science, right? They believe, hey, if we look back and it looks like it had a mortality benefit, that you should do it. I'm like, do it if you want it. Some data suggests that it's maybe good, but we don't know. If you're a student in medicine, we have so many times said the data looks good, and then it turns out that actually more people died, right? More people died. So, I mean, it's happened so many, like a great book by Vinay Prasad, called Medical Reversals. I mean, everybody should read that because there's so many, and the way that people mess up in medicine and science is they believe Rhonda Patrick and Lane Norton. So, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. And I think oftentimes the layperson who, like myself, who's trying to sort of navigate all the data that's out there and all the opinions that are out there, it takes a while to get some level of sophistication to understand what you're looking at and how, strength of evidence, for example, like what an epidemiological study is versus a randomized controlled trial. Like there's a hierarchy of evidence, and certain things, when you read a study, oftentimes, like think about like you're online, you see a tweet like study finds blah blah blah. Most people read the headline. They don't even read the story, much less actually pull up the thing in Google Scholar or PubMed and actually read the study itself. Like, what was it, a crossover trial? What was the cohort like? Like they don't dig into any of that at all. And I think that is a real problem. But to your point, I think epidemiological studies have value, but I think they have value with respect to them being hypothesis generators, right? Like we think we see this signal here, but we need like a mechanism. We need to have a mechanism that we can test and empirically validate with more rigorous, higher quality studies.
I think that these are great to get an idea, right, of what's going on. But then when you're considering, do I or do I not intervene, it is completely, needs to be left at the door, right? Do I or do I not intervene, right? The question is this going to help me in the long run? Yes or no, right? And if it's I don't know, that's fine, right? We start with I don't know, and then we say, okay, the data suggests there may be some benefits. And you may be okay and comfortable with adopting the data suggests there may be some benefits, right? Other people may be like, look, my 6 hours, my $6,000 in 1 hour a day may be better spent running, right? It may be better spent, hiking. Well, if you have, knee cartilage issues, you may want to do, biking or swimming, right?
Tell me what to
Just
do. I'm going to
yeah,
run if I
yeah.
want to.
No, I'm not telling you, right? You may be, you may be better off doing that in that hour, and because you know that, okay, I have data, I have even more data with exercise, not just the retrospective data. I have prospective data showing that it decreases necrotic cores of plaques, right? We have no, prospective data, interventional data for exercise that's controlled that says it's going to reduce cardiovascular mortality. But we have one more step than sauna, which is sort of biomechanistic data showing that it literally decreases plaques and makes them more stable.
Is
Well,
that through autophagy?
no, that's likely, well, it's unclear, unclear. Probably oxidative, decreasing oxidative stress and increasing endothelial function, right? And maybe decreasing inflammation. I don't know. But exercise has been shown to do one more thing. So now so this is a problem with Rhonda Patrick's. It's like, okay, 20% reduction in cardiovascular mortality from sauna, and it looks sexy, and maybe you'll pull the trigger on that. But now she just prevented you from exercising for an hour, right? So, not to say you, but like whoever was listening, or um, and there's a lot of issues like this. It's hard. It's hard to be right. It's hard to be right in science and medicine. So I got no problem again. But and to come back to your point, should you pay attention to other things besides cholesterol? Absolutely, you should. Should you consider doing sauna? Absolutely, on its own sort of merits, you can consider it. Would I necessarily put in my mind that it's doing anything for cardiovascular mortality? No. The fish oil is slightly different. Um, Prescription grade EPA has been shown to reduce cardiovascular mortality. So not the sort of, third party tested EPA DHA that you're probably getting, which may or may not be oxidized. But because of the temperature changes with
Hmm.
storage, you can see there's a rabbit hole, right? You see, like every
Yeah.
topic you've brought up, there's a rabbit hole. But the standardized EPA that's been purified and it's refrigerated in pharmacies, that's called Vasipa, and I got no stock in Amarin, the company that produces this product, which is, purified EPA. They've shown they've been able to reduce coronary plaques and serial CCTAs, and they've also been shown soft plaques, and they've also demonstrated a reduction in cardiovascular mortality. So if you ask me all those things that you mentioned, what's probably the most, and even more so in people with diabetes and high triglycerides, by the way. So out of all the things you listed, there's probably the strongest evidence to support, the prescription grade fish oil, even
Hmm.
though I like the sauna the most, personally.
That's interesting. So, let's talk about that a little bit because I think I use Omegagenics, and I've seen there's a website that does the third party analysis on oxidation and all sorts of things, right? I use that as a barometer for quality. And then when I received it, I do store it in the fridge because I understand that temperature can potentially oxidize it. And it comes in a dark bottle so light doesn't oxidize it. So I'm doing my best to keep it from oxidizing. What's the difference? Do you think are we straining at a gnat here, or is this like a material difference between what I'm doing versus this purified EPA that you're talking about? 'Cause I haven't heard about this before.
Yeah, I mean it's a blockbuster drug, well tested, 5,000 patient study published in New England Journal of Medicine, and not surprised you haven't heard of it because you've gone to, standard medicine that doesn't even tell you about your weight or looks to help you in any way. So not surprised. Yeah, I'll send you studies on it, but again, you're going to. So if you look at the large scale studies for fish oil, right? And again, you don't even know what they used in those large scale
Mm.
studies, right? Those prospective studies that have been equivocal, right? Not really showing mortality reduction at somewhere between 2 grams to 4 grams, right, of fish oil. Those have never been shown to be in large scale studies really effective. So,
And isn't there a concern with atrial fibrillation at that higher dose as well?
well, so let's like step down to answering the first question.
Oh,
So the
sorry.
first,
ADD.
yeah, I got it, man. But so the first question is, what is there a material difference? Yeah, there is. I mean, that's what the data is showing, and so I think you go with where the data is showing. In a purified product, there's cardiovascular mortality reduction in whatever was used in the various, clinical trials and meta-analysis for fish oil, which is EPA, DHA. There doesn't seem to be a mortality reduction or a cardiovascular mortality reduction. But I mean, there's criticisms for that. I mean, maybe, heterogeneous products, non-standardized products. You don't know how it was stored. Maybe the dose wasn't high enough. Maybe it should have been 4 grams. Maybe it should have been 6 grams, not 2 to 4 grams. So again, all these rabbit holes. But the best evidence exists for the Amarin product, icosapent ethyl, for the brand name Vasipa. Again, no stock in the company. So now the question is atrial fibrillation, what's the risk? So the risk of atrial fibrillation for fish oil is just under 1%. And for the purified product, it's just over 1%. So I think, it's something to consider, right? If you got an iWatch, at least you'll find it, because it'll detect for atrial arrhythmias. So if you're a tracker, it'll find it. So I think you have to weigh the risks and the benefits when you're sort of considering atrial fibrillation. But it's true for big fish eaters, it's true for fish oil, and it's true for the Vasipa product. So if you're eating 3 pounds of fish, I don't think that there's a huge difference between that and, fish oil supplementation or 4 pounds of fish a week, that and fish oil supplementation. Then again, you could just save your money and spend it on fish. I mean, and you get the added benefit of getting the protein and, getting fresh, knowing that it's not oxidized, right? So you could eat, 5 pounds of fish a week and come near the amount of EPA seen in either of those.
Very
Sorry,
cool.
a lot of rabbit holes, man.
And then I'm starting to think about mercury in fish and all the other, like everything seems to be trade-offs left and right, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good, absolutely good thing. You think about wild sockeye being the ideal for, like, say, salmon versus farmed, and yeah, I mean, it's a lot. It's never ending, man. Rabbit holes for everything. So you go with the best data when you can, So now the best data exists for Vasipa, but then again, the trade-off is you're going to eat something. So, eating fish may be, because if you're taking Vasipa and then eating McDonald's, right, versus eating fish, right? So that, everything's a trade-off, but at some point you have to make a judgment call.
All right, cool, man. Well, hey, we're getting right up against time, so I want to really thank you for joining me today. And why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, I mean, anywhere, social media, Dr. Tro, website, Tor.health, and podcast, Low Carb MD podcast, 10 million downloads. Any one of those places.
Awesome. Well, I love what you're doing. I'm really glad you pulled up with me today, and Happy New Year. Wish you all the best this year.
Thank you.
Later.